Hi, I'm Dr. Paul Kennedy, and welcome to Be Fit, Stay Fit America. Today, we're going to get back into strength training and start talking about training the chest, the muscle we know as the pectoralis muscle. Now, the chest muscle, the pectoralis muscle, is a two-sided muscle on the upper part of your body. It originates or starts with an attachment, a tendon, a tendon attaches a muscle to a bone on the sternum in the middle of your chest. It attaches to the bone of your upper arm, known as the humerus. It attaches right about there under the front of your shoulder. It attaches with a thick tendon about the size of your thumb. The movement of the bone is, the chest muscle allows, when flexed, to move the upper arm bone forward and across the body. Also, in some cases, it helps to move it up. So whenever you do any movement that brings your arm from the side toward the midline of the body or even up slightly, it involves the chest muscle. A chest press or a bench press is a good example. You'll notice that with any chest pressing movement, and we're going to be doing some chest presses, that whenever the movement goes up and away from the body, the upper arm bone moves from the side toward the body or toward the midline. The muscle that's allowing that to happen, or at least the major muscle that's allowing that to happen, is the muscle of the chest. As that muscle flexes, it tugs a little bit on this upper arm bone and brings the arm bone in toward the middle of the body. And that's how a chest press works. We can also make the chest move by doing single joint movements, which are known as flies, or in this case, a bent arm fly. And that's the exercise we're going to use to start our training of the chest. We're going to begin our training of the chest with a machine called a bent arm fly. Now, you might remember this machine from our discussion and our demonstration of the Kwikset system we did just a few shows ago. You recall that this lever arm rotates around a center of axis or rotation, and it allows us to isolate the movement. In other words, we're using a single joint movement because only one joint is moving when the pectoral muscle draws that arm bone in. That's what the bent arm fly is. In this case, with a machine like this, we can use one arm at a time, or we can use them both, and we'll demonstrate that in a minute. This is a typical selectorized machine. In other words, it's stack loaded. It has a weight stack, and we simply use a pin to adjust the amount of weight. I'm going to slide the pin right into the weight stack. Now remember, we're going to be looking for a weight that we can do about 8 to 12 times to momentary fatigue, and also remember that it might take you 2 or 3 workouts to get to that base level. Once again, all the information about the Kwikset and how it's done is in Be Fit, Stay Fit, why your workout doesn't work and how to fix it. So pick up a copy. Now, when we get into the machine, we also have to make sure that we're located correctly under the axis of rotation. And here's where the axis of rotation is. You can see it goes straight through here. So you can just look for the little button right here, and we adjust the seat this way. If we take a look here, you'll notice that there's some numbers. Every person is a little bit taller, a little bit shorter than everybody else. Everybody has a little bit of different torso length. Everybody has a little bit of a different size butt. And when you put those measurements together, you get the height on the back of the pad. You want to adjust the seat so that your shoulder is directly under the center of rotation, because that's really where the rotation is going to be taking place. I'm adjusting the seat that fits my size. In this case, it's a 5. I'm going to take my place in the machine. I'm going to lean back, look straight ahead. Now, on this machine, let's assume that I've set the weight at a resistance that I know I can accomplish a minimum of 8 times, but a maximum of 12 times. If I can do it more than 12 times on the very first set, obviously the weight is now not challenging enough, and I'm going to take the weight up a little bit. If I can't do it at least 8 times, that means the weight is a little bit too heavy, and I'm going to have to take the resistance down a little bit. I'm going to grasp the bar, one arm at a time, and we're going to start at the back of the movement. Remember, we want that good stretch. Remember full range of motion we talked about? We're going to start here and bring the weight up quickly under control, pause, all the way back down in about 3 to 4 seconds, and get a good stretch and pause. Up under control, pause, and back down. Each time we do the movement, we're challenging that pectoral muscle to pull against the upper arm bone, that humerus, and draw that arm bone in toward the center of the body. When we get toward the center of the body, we're going to pause and sort of squeeze it in just a little bit and take it back under control. By using the Kwikset system, we can establish 1 to 3 sets of properly performed exercise and really challenge the pectoral muscle. Now, to review that Kwikset system real quick, let's assume that I just did 10 repetitions and failed on number 11. I made that attempt to do number 11 and couldn't quite complete the range of motion. All I'm going to do is move to the back of the machine, take the pin out, reduce the resistance by 25 to 30%, get back into the machine, readjust it, and start my exercise all over again. Also remember that the only set we're going to record is the very first set that we did. And here's why. We don't really have to worry about a lot of warm-up sets, although you're certainly welcome to do those, because if we have a weight that we can do 8 to 12 times maximum, we're using approximately 70% of our 1 repetition maximum. That means we're using 70% of what we can do 1 time. And in most cases, that's a weight that we can do safely if we lift the weight or move the weight under control. You also notice with the equipment that I'm using and with the technique that I'm not doing this, I'm not throwing the weight, I'm not trying to be the fastest lifter, I'm trying to make sure that I can isolate the muscle and bring it down under control to a good stretch to make it more flexible as well as strong. Another way to accomplish a bent arm fly instead of using a selectorized stack-loaded machine is to use a simple device called a dumbbell. The only difficulty with doing dumbbell bent arm flies, however, is the control of the arm. The chest is generally far stronger than the arm's ability to extend itself. By that I mean, when we ever do a bent arm fly with a dumbbell, we want to have a slight angle in the arm. As our chest gets stronger, we have to use slightly larger dumbbells. That means it's going to be much more difficult for us to keep the arm at a proper angle, generally about 10 to 15 degrees as we pull it in front of us. This is why it's important to use a slower movement. That way we don't have to use dumbbells that are as heavy. If we can use a lighter dumbbell through a greater range of motion with a slightly slower speed, we can get even a greater workload to the muscle to make it work. And it means for men and women, we get a similar effect in terms of making ourselves a little bit stronger. Now, with the dumbbells, all we're going to do is bring the dumbbell up to our knees, place them on our thigh. Now I'm going to lean back. I've placed the dumbbell in this position so that the bar on the dumbbell is perpendicular to my body. I've placed my feet on the bench. If you feel comfortable there, some of you who are a little bit taller might want to put your feet on the floor to stabilize yourself. We're going to take the weight out to about 85 degrees. We're going to bring the weight in, under control, pause, and then back out until we feel the stretch in the shoulder. I feel that good stretch. Bring it back up under control and pause. Bring it back down under control and pause. Now this is where we start to have problems. As we get a little bit more fatigued, as we go through the weight movement, we have a tendency to want to draw the dumbbells in and press them out. And this is not a pressing movement. This is a single joint movement called a bent arm fly. So maintain the angle of the arm at the elbow as you do the exercise. Once you can no longer maintain that movement, you've got momentary fatigue or volitional failure, in which case you want to bring the weight back down. We're going to sit up, put the dumbbells down, roll them away, and using the quick set system, we're going to pick up a set of weights, in this case, that are about 1/3 the weight of what we just used. Now remember, we're going to assume that I failed at about 8 to 12 repetitions. Once again, bring them up to your thigh. We're going to rock back, put the dumbbells perpendicular to our chest. We're going to take the weight out at about 85 degrees, bring it in under control, pause, and then back down under control till we feel that stretch. And you can see it on the camera here. You can see as we go all the way down, you get a good stretch out of that shoulder. Now those of you who have shoulder problems, I would recommend that you stay with the selectorized machine we used first, because you can adjust it a little bit easier, you control it a little bit easier. But in this case, we're using the same movement. It's still a single joint movement. We're able to get a good stretch out of the shoulder, and better yet, we're still able to use the quick set system by using decreasing levels of resistance with the dumbbells. One point of importance in terms of dumbbell safety, when you bring the weights back down, make sure that you've already rolled away the first set before you put the second set down to avoid you having to crack those knuckles. Then I would pick up my next set. Remember too, that if you're just starting out with the quick set system, or if you haven't lifted in a while, I want you to do only the first set of exercise to momentary fatigue between 8 and 12 repetitions. We're looking for 1 to 3 sets, including your quick sets, in order to do your chest. That's a simple bent arm fly using a dumbbell. Now, let's try another exercise for the chest to start to round out your program a little bit more. One of the challenges of training the chest is making sure that we hit both portions. That's right, I said both portions. The chest really has an upper and a lower section. The upper section, the upper half, is known as the clavicular section of the pectoralis muscle, or the upper chest. The lower portion is known as the sternal. Now, whenever we want to hit the upper portion of the chest, and we can do it with a bent arm fly just like we did on the bench over here, is that we need to put our head at an angle that's up. You notice now I'm on an inclined bench. I'm not going to be doing a chest press that you might suspect because we're on an inclined bench. I'm going to do the same exercise we just did with my arms at the same angle, only this time, because of the angle of the bench, the upper part of my chest is going to be the prime mover here. This is going to be the part of the chest that's going to help me to draw the weight in toward the midline and take it back down under control if I do it in the proper fashion. So we're bringing it up under control, pause, back down at about twice the time it takes us to lift. And again, we want that nice stretch at the bottom and then back up under control. Pause, down under control to a good stretch, pause, and then back up. Now, we'll do this until we reach momentary fatigue, as usual, between 8 to 12 repetitions, because this is an upper body exercise. When we reach momentary fatigue, I'm going to sit up, put the dumbbells on my thighs, reach down, put them on the floor, and roll them out of the way and pick up the next set. Because we've already familiarized you with the quick set system, understand that we want you to use that system each time you lift. It doesn't matter whether it's a chest, back, shoulder, or lower body exercise. The quick set system is the most efficient, effective way for you to work any muscle in your body. Probably no other exercise or lift is associated with chest training other than the bench press. It's the most commonly known one. But please don't make it the be-all and end-all. A bench press or a chest press is merely a means to an end. Don't make it the end in itself. Now, if you take a look at the barbell, we've set it up so we can use that quick set system we've taught you about and we used with our dumbbell training. I've set up the barbell so that when I'm done each set, I can pull the two smaller barbells off the end. That way, I can start with a weight that I know that I can use. And now I've set it up so we're assuming I can only do 8 to 12 repetitions with this particular amount of weight. And as soon as I reach momentary fatigue, I will re-rack the bar and I'll pull one of the barbells off the end. That will reduce the weight by about 25 to 30%, and I'll start using the weight right away. That way we can get that quick set system in. It's much easier to use. But let's talk a little bit about technique. With a bench press, the first thing we want to make sure you have is a spotter. Now, because we're on camera, I've got people off to the side that can spot for me. When you're doing your exercise, make sure when you're using a free weight, particularly a barbell, over your face or over your head, that you always have someone standing behind the bench to spot you. It's an important safety technique. With the bench press, we're going to lean back. You can either put your feet on the bench or on the floor, but make sure your body is stabilized. Notice the break in the knurling on the bar. That's so you can set your hands in the proper position and have them in the same position each time. I usually have mine about 1.5 inches inside the knurling, and that's just simply based on the length of my arms and the width of my shoulders. I've already set the weight at a weight we're assuming I can do with the proper number of repetitions, and that is 8 to 12. I'm going to push the weight up off the rack, pause, and bring the weight down under control in about 3 to 4 seconds. Pause at the bottom, take the weight up in about 1 to 2, pause, back down under control. Now, exhale on exertion, and inhale as we bring the weight back down. Never hold your breath when you're doing a bench press, and also keep your face relaxed. I see a lot of people make a face and turn around and push their back. If you have to do that to take the weight up, the weight is now too heavy. Take the weight up under control, pause, and back down under control. Now, as we reach momentary fatigue, we want you to re-rack the weight. Now, I'm going to go to the side, pull off one of the barbells on each side, put it on the rack. We're going to do this on each side, and what I've successfully done here is I've reduced the weight by about 25 to 30%. Now remember, we're assuming that I was fatigued, completely fatigued between 8 and 12 repetitions. That's that momentary muscular failure or volitional failure we've been talking about. I reset the weights, take my position on the bench, and as quickly as possible, I re-rack the weight and start lifting all over again. Up under control, and back down under control. And I'll do as many repetitions as I can until I reach momentary muscular failure. Now, on our strength training card, we're only going to record the very first set that we did, because that's the only set where the muscle was fresh, untrained, and it's easier and a lot more accurate for us to actually record that number. Now, if I wanted to do a third set, which is actually the second quick set, I'd simply pop off, take the other barbell off, and now I'm actually only using about 50% of the original weight, but it's giving me an awful lot of a challenge. It's challenging, it's really pushing my muscles in my chest, and it's not very heavy. So I'm making less weight do more work. That's why the quick set system is so effective. Now, as I mentioned to you earlier, the chest actually has an upper and a lower portion, the clavicular portion at the top and the sternal portion at the bottom. Let's show you a couple real simple exercises to train those parts of the chest. Now, as you remember from before, if you want to train the upper portion of the chest a little bit more, isolate it a little bit more, that clavicular section along the upper portion of the collarbone, we want to make sure that our head is in an upper position or at an upper angle, just like we showed you with the dumbbell flies. If we want to work the lower portion or the sternal portion of the chest, we want to make sure that our head is in a lower position or at a lower angle. And we're now on the decline press, where the head is going to be lower than the hips. This way, we're going to set it up so we can train the lower portion of the chest. Now, I've got the barbell set up with a decent amount of weights, but remember, we always want to find a weight we can train within 8 to 12 repetitions on that first set. On a decline press, we also have to make sure that we have our feet stabilized. And this particular bench has an adjustable foot pad, and that way I can make sure that I've got the right arm length and the right torso length to be able to reach the bar. So we hook our feet under the pads, we go a little bit sideways onto the bench, and it's the same position we would use with a regular supine or flat bench. I put my hands in the same position, I lift the weight straight up off the bar, and we bring it down under control, pause, and back up under control. And please notice when I come all the way down, I can get a little bit better stretch out of the bar because of the angle of my chest. Up under control, pause, and down under control. When I reach momentary fatigue, I re-rack the bar. And if we were going to be doing the quick set system, we would reduce the weight by about 25 or 30% and immediately begin to lift. The decline press, it's a great way to train that section of the pectoral or chest muscle at the bottom of the chest. You recall that we were doing dumbbell flies on an incline press. We can also do dumbbell presses on an incline press, and that will work the upper portion. Now, with the incline press, we also have an adjustable seat because everybody's got a little bit of a different torso length, a little bit of a different length when it comes to positioning yourself under the bar. You want the bar slightly behind the location of your shoulder, and then we're going to re-grasp the bar just like we normally would do with the regular width as we would do on a flat bench. We're going to extend the bar up, position our feet to stabilize our body, bring the weight down under control, pause, and blow the weight back out, exhale on exertion, bring it down under control, pause, and all the way back out. Now when you bring it all the way down to your chest, you are going to feel a little bit of a tug up around your collarbone. That's what shows you that the clavicular portion of the bench press is the part that's working. We're using the upper part of the pectoral muscle rather than the lower part, although all are involved in the lift. As soon as we reach momentary fatigue, we re-rack the bar. If we were using the quick set system, and I hope you're going to, we would come off and reduce the amount of resistance or weight on the bar by about 25 or 30%, reseat ourselves and reposition ourselves on the bar, and continue to lift. If we wanted to go all the way through the quick set system, we would do it yet again once we reach momentary fatigue. That's all the time we have for today's show. We'll finish our series on training the chest next week, when we'll also start our series on training the upper back. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time on Be Fit, Stay Fit America. If you have a specific food, you have increased its nutrient density. For example, you can eat a fistful of French fries. You've gotten the vet bill is